Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Rosslyn Hill Chapel, a spiritual home for open minds. I'm Sally Somerville, chapel elder and your worship assistant for this service. Whoever you are and wherever you are along life's journey, there is a place for you here in the Unitarian community. We welcome back Bright Lights, our children's chapel and creche for children aged 2 and above. Babies under 2 are welcome in the creche but need to be accompanied by an adult. If you are watching at home, please join the virtual side aisle at midday. The Zoom link was in the weekly email, and you can find it via the link in the YouTube description. And those of you in the chapel, do join us for refreshments in the real side aisle after the service. At 6 p.m. this evening, we have our regular 30-minute mindfulness. Then at 7 p.m., our evening gathering is the monthly Soul Fuel gathering of acoustic music. That's acoustic music, poetry, and storytelling. This month features the Canadian duo Yerex and Richard Clark, who are taking a break from their honeymoon to perform for us. You can find information about these and all our activities on our website. If you prefer a paper copy, the September edition of the Open Mind newsletter is available from the steward's table. A date for your diaries is the 18th of September. It's our next Sunday afternoon workshop, which will be on managing conflict. It will be led by fellow Unitarian Sarah Wilcox, who says, "Conflict is a part of everyday life and relationships, but there are methods we can employ to manage conflict in a healthier and helpful way." This workshop offers the opportunity for us to consider what can trigger a conflict, the reasons why we handle conflict the way we do, and how we can improve our response to conflict so that we resolve issues more constructively. With the collection, we've returned to the practice of passing the collection basket, and we will do this during the offertory. For some of this will be a symbolic act, especially if we normally donate by card. The card reader will be available near the piano after this service, and the gift aid envelopes look like this. The collection this month will go toward the Against Malaria Foundation. I'll say that again, Against Malaria Foundation.
Come and find a quiet center in the crowded life we lead. Find the room for hope to enter. Find the space where we are freed. Clear the chaos and the clutter. Clear our eyes that we may see all the things that really matter. Be at peace and simply be.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be back after being away for a couple of weeks. I'm Reverend Kate Dean. I'm proud to serve as the minister for this beautiful and sacred place. We begin our worship by lighting our chalice flame, the symbol of our liberal religious faith, with words by the Unitarian minister, Reverend Celia Cartwright. This is our meeting house for worship. Here we are a community connected by ties of faith and fellowship. May the diversity of our beliefs be a blessing to share, that all may grow in harmony with the divine. I'd like to thank Sally, our worship assistant, for the sparklingly clean chalice that we now have. After the service, you are certainly welcome to join us for refreshments, but we also have a new monthly discussion group. Excuse me. A discussion group called Soul Circle after the service, around 12:15. We're going to discuss this month's theme of belonging and also learn a little more about Unitarianism. So this session is particularly aimed at those who are newer to our chapel, but everyone is welcome. And we're going to meet on the table at the back of the chapel. So grab a drink and come and join us to discuss belonging and the Unitarian approach. Now, we come together as a spiritual community and we like to get to know one another. So now I invite you to turn to someone near you to say your name and welcome them to chapel this morning. It's lovely to hear those bubbling conversations, and I do hope they continue over tea or coffee after the service. But for now, let's sing our first hymn. Those who are eagle-eyed will know that there aren't over 400 hymns, I think, in our hymnal. So we're going for hymn number 33. That's 33 in your purple book. Enter, rejoice, and come in. And as is our tradition, please rise as you're able after we've heard the introduction. So hymn number 33. except for the children and young people. I've got a story for all ages, but if you'd like to come forward and sit with me, I've got some pictures to show you. Hopefully everyone else can hear me too. It's lovely to see you all. I hope you've had a good summer. You might want to come a bit further forward because I've got pictures in this book.
I've read 6 Dinner 6.
You know this book. I thought you might, and you do as well. Oh, I hope you enjoy it.
It's very funny.
Well, let's read it for everyone, and hopefully we can let all the grown-ups hear this wonderful story as well. So this is called 6 Dinner Sid, and it's by Inga Moore, and you can see Sid on the front cover there. He's a big, fluffy black cat. Sid lived at number 1 Aristotle Street. He also lived at number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6. Sid lived in 6 houses so that he could have 6 dinners. Each night he would slip out of number 1, where he might have had chicken, into number 2 for fish, into number 3 for lamb, mince at number 4, fish again at number 5, rounding off at number 6 with beef and kidney stew. Now, since no one talked to their neighbours in Aristotle Street, no one knew what Sid was up to. They each believed the cat they fed was theirs, and theirs alone. But Sid had to work for his dinners. It wasn't easy being 6 people's pet. He had 6 different names to remember, and 6 different ways to behave. When he was being Scaramouche, Sid put on swanky airs. As Bob, he had a job. Look, what's his job there?
Catching mice.
He's catching mice when he's Bob. He was naughty as Satan. He was silly as Sally. As Sooty, he smooched. But as Schwartz, he had to act rough and tough. Look what he's doing there. Can you see? He's chasing a dog. All this work wore Sid out, but he didn't care as long as he had his 6 dinners. And he liked to be scratched in 6 different places and sleep in 6 different beds. And life in Aristotle Street was just about perfect for Sid until one cold, damp day, he caught a nasty cough. And so the next thing he knew, he was being taken to the vet 6 times. He went with 6 different people in 6 different ways. He's being carried here in a box. He's going in a sports car, in the basket of a bicycle, on the back of a moped, all kinds of different ways to the vet. And the vet said his cough wasn't nearly as nasty as it sounded, and he would just give him a little spoonful of medicine. 6 spoonfuls. Well, the vet was quite a clever man, and he realised that there couldn't possibly be 6 black cats all living in Aristotle Street, all with a cough at the same time. So he called up Sid's owners, and Sid was found out. When they discovered what he'd been up to, Sid's owners were furious. They said that he had no business having so many dinners. They said in future they would make sure that he had only one dinner a day. I was thinking about this, 6 people, okay, maybe 6 different days of the week, a bit like we share out our cold weather shelter and we do it on a Friday. What happens on the 7th day? But anyway, it didn't get that far because Sid was a 6 dinner a day cat. So he went to live at number 1 Pythagoras Place. He also went to live at numbers 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Unlike Aristotle Street, the people who lived in Pythagoras Place talked to their neighbours. So right from the start, everyone knew about Sid's 6 dinners. And because everyone knew, nobody minded. So that's our story of 6 Dinner Sid by Inga Moore. Now I hope you have wonderful time at Bright Lights with all of your different activities. We're going to sing you out now. Let's sing the children out to their activities. Thank you. I invite you now into a time of prayer and meditation. We come together in fellowship each Sunday with hearts full of joy and full of concern. We think especially of those victims of the floods in Pakistan and those more closer to home, struggling with food and energy rises. If you are holding someone in your heart this morning, I invite you to say their name aloud in the coming moments of stillness, so that we may also hold them in our prayers. Spirit of life and love, God of our hearts, we give thanks for those who bring us joy and pray for the safekeeping of those whom we hold in concern. For all those names, spoken and unspoken, may they be surrounded by the loving kindness that we offer them today. Blessed be, and amen. As Sally mentioned, our collection this month is divided between the upkeep of this beautiful chapel and this month's Good Cause Against Malaria Foundation. The Against Malaria Foundation helps protect people from malaria, The charity is registered in many different countries and funds anti-malaria nets, specifically long-lasting insecticidal nets, and works with distribution partners to ensure that they are put to good use. The charity's costs are met by private donors. Malaria kills about 400,000 people every year, and more than 200 million fall ill. Nets are a more effective way of saving lives than any other, and so we are pleased to be putting our support to this very good cause. The collection will now be taken.
Fine art of being a good guest. The most important thing that I have learned in traveling to more than 20 countries is the art of being a good guest. And I'm a particularly fine visitor at the supper table. I've consumed live fish in Inner Mongolia, not quite coagulated blood sausage on the Tibetan plateau, shredded pig's ear in China, grilled lamb fat in Uzbekistan, horse steaks in Kazakhstan, vodka made from fermented mare's milk in Siberia, Vegemite in Australia, goat in Brazil, and snails in France. I don't have an iron stomach by any means, but I do have the will to be a virtuous visitor. We are all visitors, even when we are at home. Our time in any relationship or place is ultimately limited. We are passing through. Nobody stays forever. How we might act if we consider ourselves guests in the lives of our friends and family. Being a good guest is rather simple in principle, but occasionally challenging in practice. One begins by demanding nothing more than the bare elements of life and dignity, which every host is more than delighted to exceed. The good guest then simply allows the other person to be a good host, to share his gifts, to play her music, to tell his stories, to show her places, and to serve his foods. Finally, a guest should cultivate and express genuine gratitude. It need not be abusive or exorbitant, only sincere. We might also think ourselves as uninvited, but not unwelcome guests of the planet. And I think the rules for being a good guest of the world are just the same. Ask little, accept what is offered, and give thanks.
Thank you, Andrew, for that reading by Geoffrey Lockwood. Let us sing once again. This time the words are in your service sheet. It's "Let Love Continue Long." Please be seated. Our second reading is The Way Home by Penny Harter. There is a way home. It runs through the cornfields beneath the stars, rises like a river to wash the apple trees below the barn. If you are careful, you will not disturb the snakes who curl in the tall weeds beside the grassy path your feet have known. Sometimes in the distance, you will see the others, silhouettes on moonlit hills, carrying hoes over their shoulders, returning from their fields, even as you go to yours, sure-footed as a goat, down the stubbled rows toward sleep. When you climb to the graveyard on the hillside, stop among the old ones. Take off your clothes, lie down on the earth with your head in the shadows. The moon throws between the tombstones, and begin to count the stars in the Milky Way. you will run out of numbers. You will run out of words. You will forget how to talk to the sky. You will forget where you have come from or where you are going. You will only know that you are light among the stars, and that cornfields spiral out from you on every side, shining corn as far as you can see, even over the edge of the world, that dark circle you found at last. Let us pray a prayer for all. Spirit of life and love, God of our hearts, as we seek connection with someone, something beyond ourselves, we remain humbled by the awesome complexity of the universe, the miracle of creation, and the grace of the ultimate Spirit. In this time of prayer, let us give thanks for our community and our many gifts by naming our blessings quietly to ourselves in these moments of stillness. Recognizing our woes and faults, let us sit quietly with those parts of ourselves which cause us discomfort, with a spirit of gentle understanding and forgiveness. Spirit of the divine self, we open up our hearts to listen to the wisdom of the still small voice that may speak in quiet moments. God of our hearts, let this small act of worship send a ripple of loving kindness from this place to our loved ones, our acquaintances, and the wider world. O God, may we become the embodiment of divine love. Blessed be. Amen. An invitation to belong to a spiritual community is at its heart saying, "Join me around the campfire." In the 1930s, 2 archaeologists discovered fragments of mammoth ivory in a cave in southern Germany. 30 years later, the fragments were eventually pieced together to reveal a figure about 30 centimeters tall, with the head of a lion and the body of a man. At around 40,000 years old, it is said to be one of the earliest examples of early human ability to imagine something which doesn't exist in the natural world. It's estimated that such a figure would have taken around 400 hours of work. In a society whose main activities related to survival, finding food, making fire, protecting children, it's curious to think that someone would be allowed to spend so much time carving an item with no obvious purpose. While nobody knows the true use of the Lion Man, who now resides in the British Museum, some have speculated that it was used in rituals, perhaps where stories were shared around a campfire. We could imagine this lovingly crafted object being passed from one individual to another as a sort of prehistoric talking stick. From studying hunter-gatherer tribes on the borders of Botswana and Namibia in southern Africa, the anthropologist Polly Weissner was able to make suppositions about how early humans would have interacted around the campfire. By analysing day and nighttime conversations in her research, she suggested that conversations around the campfire would have been less practical and work-related, more involved with building relationships, discussing dreams and beliefs. When we form mutual sharing and supportive groups, or by belonging to a spiritual community, part of what we are doing is building relationships, discussing dreams and beliefs. We are sharing our hopes and plans with people who are willing to support us. In those early tribal cultures, those around our campfire might have been extended family members. But these days, with families scattered many miles apart or estranged for other reasons, it can be hard for us to find our campfire circle to satisfy our inner cave person. And these days we have moved, it seems, from talking sticks to selfie sticks. The popularity of the selfie stick, which allows tourists to take photos of themselves without having to interact with other people, is a worrying sign that we may have become more insular and less open to social interactions. While the sticks themselves seem to be less ubiquitous recently, I've noticed, the selfie is here to stay. If you have been on holiday over the summer or even observing tourists in your own local neighborhood, you will have seen them taking selfies, and maybe you've taken a few yourself. Sometimes I offer to take photos for people. You can usually get a better composition and avoid the up-the-nose shot or the head half cut off shot, which are more likely with handheld selfies. I am perplexed by the number of people who politely decline. Do they think I'm going to run off with their camera phone? Or maybe they think it's too much of an imposition. Or maybe they are just so surprised that a stranger is actually speaking to them that they are incapable of rational thought. Those who accept are often quite grateful. In my experience, feeling like a stranger in your own city can feel like the opposite of a sense of belonging. Recently, I was sitting near the back of a bus in my local neighborhood, and on the back seat sat two adolescents listening to noisy videos and music through a really tinny speaker on their phone. I glanced over and got a sharp stare in return. When my stop came, they also rose to leave, and I got up before them, and I wondered if they thought I was being impolite by sort of barging in front of them. I was closer to the door, but anyway, I got off the bus, and in my head, that small interaction became a big problem. Although I was walking quite slowly to my destination, they didn't seem to move to overtake me, and this became somewhat intimidating. So I stopped at one of those information points to look at a map, even though I did know where I was going. And the younger one stopped to play with the touch screen on the information point. And I suspected her of lingering. So I asked her in a cheery way if she knew the way to Granary Square. Her eyes lit up, and her face broke into a smile. "Oh, yes," she said, and pointed out the way. She said, "We're going that way too." I thanked her, and she ran off to join her friend. And I realized then that she was probably only about 9 or 10 years old. And in that moment, I saw a young girl, proud of herself, that she was able to help a stranger, that she knew her way around, and that she belonged in her neighborhood. And of course, I also learned something about my own unacknowledged and unconscious bias about young people. In our first reading by Geoffrey Lockwood, he wrote, "How might we act if we consider ourselves guests in the lives of friends and family?" Being a good guest is rather simple in principle, but occasionally challenging in practice. This idea of being a guest in the lives of those of our closest relationships brings a new perspective. And I wonder if you, like me, began to think about how this approach might help in your life when you heard it during that reading. We belong to each other, and the first step starts with self-acceptance, not always an easy thing, and then being willing to reveal our tender spots, which give others the opportunity to practice being a good host and helpmate. People feel a sense of belonging when they are encouraged. To feel encouraged, we need to feel heard and perhaps needed, that our existence matters in the world. Here in this spiritual community, we offer a space for everyone to speak about their passions and their challenges. And often they receive, or hopefully you will feel you have received, the encouragement and support that you need. In our story for all ages earlier, we heard about a particularly greedy and independent cat, Sixtina Sid, who wasn't going to be owned by just one human. For me, the extra lesson was that when he moved to the street where the neighbors spoke to each other, they were all aware of his antics and were not afraid to let him be his authentic cat self. He was essentially being a good guest and allowing his human friends to feel needed by being good hosts. As we return home to daily patterns after summer diversions, the words of Geoffrey Lockwood offer guidance. We might also think of ourselves, he writes, as uninvited but not unwelcome guests of the planet. And I think the rules of being a good guest of the world are just the same. Ask little, accept what is offered, and give thanks. So, why not join me around the campfire? We endeavour to create these circles of connection and belonging in our morning and evening services, as well as during other events. And the latest, as I mentioned, is our Soul Circle after this service, a chance to discuss this month's theme of belonging and ask questions about the Unitarian approach. I end with the words of the Irish poet John O'Donoghue, who writes, "The word belonging holds together the two fundamental aspects of life, being and longing, the longing of our being and the being of our longing. And so may our being together bring us home to ourselves, and bring comfort to that part of ourselves which longs to belong. Blessed be. And now let us return to our purple hymnal for our final song. This is hymn number 130. Ours is a Town for Everyone, hymn number 130. Let us end with a blessing used regularly by our friends at Golders Green Unitarians. In the name of us all, let there be peace and love among us. May the skies be clear, may the streets be safe. In the name of us all, let there be peace. Please be seated. you so much to our Director of Music, John Evans, to our worship assistant and steward and everyone who makes these Sunday mornings so special. Do join us for tea and coffee in the side aisle, grab your drink and then come to the back. In about 10 minutes we'll start our Soul Circle discussion. Thank you everyone.